Welcome to SmartLists by QueryGury. In this video, we will demonstrate some of the SmartList's more advanced capabilities. We recommend watching the previous demos in the series that demonstrate basic usage of related lists, list views, and history views. Let's start with a brief under-the-hood description of how SmartLists work. SmartLists are composed of two main components: the server side, which we like to call the query, and the client side we call the grid. The server side is responsible for actually running the Salesforce SOQL query, while the grid client side is responsible for the rendering and the dynamic user interaction. Working with the SmartLists consists of three steps: defining the context of the query, executing the query on the server, and displaying the results in the grid. The context represents the environment of the query. This includes the main object, the list of fields to display, the query filter that retrieves specific records, and the sort order. In many cases, the SmartList determines the initial default context automatically based on the originating page. For example, invoking a SmartList from a related list automatically determines the initial context to be all the records related to the parent object with the fields and sort order as defined by the related list. Alternatively, the user can select an object and the list view as the initial context. Let's start with manually selecting a context. First, we select the base object from the leftmost drop-down list. We can access an object by its name. Type letters to quickly find the object, select it, and then select a list view if more than one exists. Some objects, such as accounts or contacts, will show predefined list views based on actual list views defined under the Objects tab. Many other objects, such as history objects, do not have standard list views defined and thus will show a single virtual list view. In this case, the SmartList will attempt to select a meaningful default set of fields for us. If we select a special object, such as history or share, there will be only a single view. Next, we can choose how many records to retrieve from the server. Salesforce limits the number to 50,000, but in reality, it will be smaller due to other size limitations. The last step is to click Show Results. This will execute the query on the server and display the results in the SmartList grid. When we select a list view, the context is defined under the hood. This includes the fields to be displayed, the server-side filter, and the sort order. Let's try a few examples. Select the contact object. Then select a list view and click Show Results. The SmartList grid will look similar to the list view selected. In contrast to list views, we can retrieve a large number of records from the server by changing the number of records. Let's choose to display 10,000 records and click Show Results again. Once the records are in the grid, we can dynamically sort and filter them. The same workflow applies to objects that are not typically exposed, such as history or sharing objects. Using the basic default query is just the first step. Things start to get interesting when we apply more sophisticated filters on the server. Let's utilize the advanced server-side filtering capabilities of SmartLists. We start by displaying a custom context list view, such as New Last Month. To define a query, click on Build Query and note the list on the left. It currently shows all filterable fields of the contact base object. We can define one or more conditions based on the contact's own fields, or even its parents' and grandparents' fields. Let's define our first condition. Say we are looking for contacts with the title VP that work for a reseller. We select the title field, choose the Contains operation, and enter VP as the value. Let's click Add Condition and scroll down to see the first condition defined. Wait a minute, we made a mistake. We wrote VC instead of VP. Let's quickly fix it. To edit, click on the Edit icon, fix the value and/or the condition, and click the Save icon. The next step is to add the type of the account, which is the contact's parent. Let's select the account ID. Note the arrow indicating it is a parent. We now have a list of the account's fields. Let's select the account type field, the equals operator, and from the list of values, let's select reseller. Click Add Condition and scroll down a bit to see how the conditions relate. The list of operators and the type of the input depend on the type of field selected. The default pattern is to join all conditions with the AND operator. We can easily change this by clicking on the Edit button. For example, change AND to OR and save. In this case, we'll stick with AND. To run the query, we will click Execute Query. The SmartList displays the first 500 records out of more than 5,000 that satisfy the filter conditions. At this point, we can load all records and use the dynamic SmartList grid or further narrow down the server-side filter. Let's update the query and add a condition that accounts industry should equal hospitality and rerun the query. Great! Now we have a reasonable number of records to work with. But wait a second, let's say we prefer not to filter by resellers only. Let's remove that condition. Enter Build Query and click on the garbage bin icon next to that condition and rerun by clicking Execute Query. Now that we've removed the account type filter, how will we know the account type of each contact? Worry not, because help is on the way. Let's add that field to our view. Scroll down a bit and click on the Select Fields to View. We now see a list of all the object's fields. Click on the account object and then select Type. We would like to see this field next to the account name, so let's rearrange by dragging and dropping. While we are at it, let's also add the contact's description field. Let's run the query to check our modified view. Looking good, we have more than 1,800 contacts, and we can use the SmartList grid filter to narrow down quickly on any field. Using the SmartList grid to sort the results is very effective, but only works on the subset that has been loaded from the server into the SmartList. When the base data of an object is extremely large, it is critical to retrieve the exact subset of records you're looking for. In addition to filtering, we can sort on the server side, enabling the retrieval of the latest changes made. Click on Build Query and scroll down to Change Results Sorting Order. On the left side, we can select any sortable field from the base object or any of its parents. Let's sort by last modified date in descending order and add by clicking Add Order. We can sort by multiple fields and rearrange their priorities. Click Execute Query. The SmartList grid now shows the records in the order requested. We can even sort based on parents fields. For example, let's reset the sort and select the contact's account name as the sort field. Once we click Execute Query, we see that the results are arranged as expected. Let's review some of the query management tools. To quickly revert back to the basic query, click Reset Query. This will delete all the manual changes made while keeping the base context intact. In other words, Reset Query will take you back to the base definition of the list view or the related list. As a final note, let us review some of the client-side grid operations. The SmartList grid shows two counters, the total records available and the view X out of Y on the top right of the grid. Each has a different meaning. The total records available indicates how many records on the server satisfy the underlying query. If the query has no filter, it shows the total number of records in the underlying object. Hovering the mouse over the filter icon on the top right will show the underlying query. The numbers on the top right in the form of view X out of Y indicate how many records are visible using the grid client-side filter. If no grid filter is defined, this indicates that all the client records are visible. The SmartList grid has the ability to paginate dynamically. We can navigate forwards or backwards or to the first and last page and change the size of a page by selecting a different size than the 20 record default. Sometimes there are too many columns displayed and it is hard to effectively see the data. We can easily remove and later add back any columns dynamically by using the SmartList Select Columns option. Let's remove a few and observe the changes in the grid. Now let's add them back and change the order of the displayed columns. It is important to understand the limitations of max records. Although the theoretical limit imposed by Salesforce is 50,000 records, other limitations kick in and we are usually able to display about half. Smart use of query filters can deal with almost any situation to limit the number of records on the server side and bypass Salesforce restrictions. In addition, the local browser and client memory may impose further limitations on the maximum number of records that can be handled by the SmartList grid. The power of server-side query building with client-side responsiveness makes SmartLists an ideal tool for any user or admin working with large sets of data. To learn how SmartLists can be used to display related lists, list views, history tracking, and many more datasets, please watch the other demos available on www.QueryGuru.com. Thank you for watching.